Hi, I'm Rose, and this is the Sovereign Soul, where I talk about all things, all freedom, soul freedom within this life and this body, and outside of this life and this body. This is definitely, I would say, my life's goal and ambition in this body is to totally and completely understand sovereignty, soul sovereignty, and to be able to reclaim that for myself fully. And I hope for my kids, fingers crossed, and for anybody that I work with. Soul sovereignty to me is what every single being on earth and in all of existence deserves. Nothing should have power over us. Nothing should be able to manipulate us, and nothing should be able to make decisions for us. I think those are things that we should have that right to. When I look at planet Earth, sometimes it feels so overwhelming because you can see so much mess, so much corruption, and so it's like we're so far away from sovereignty. Sovereignty to me is the deepest act of equality and the deepest act of love. And I think that when people start awakening and move into their real divinity and integrity, they would see the equality of all beings and all souls. But the way in which this world functions is quite far away from that. It's so far from that. And this is really sad. And in that sadness, I can sometimes feel quite overwhelmed. And I would say that more than likely, it's a kind of victim consciousness because there's a hopelessness and a helplessness that I develop only in my small little world just by seeing that and just seeing like how wrong that is and wanting so badly to be able to say to everybody all at once, hey, it doesn't need to be like this. But that's not the world, that's not the way the game is played, and that's certainly not the way things are in the reality that we are all sharing. I'm not so sure that it's the same reality we're all sharing, but it definitely is a reality that we are sharing. And I'm going to start off, well, not really starting, am I? I'm like already 3 minutes into this, but what I want to talk about is cognitive dissonance. I watched such an interesting little clip the other day. This is some dude who, does the psych work in the CIA, and part of that is very much understanding how human beings function. And more than anything, the CIA work a lot on power over people, how to control people. And he was saying that if you can get a person into a cognitive dissonance, then you will have control over them. And what does that mean? In my energy healing work, I come across the cognitive dissonance a lot, and it's people, not people, it's most people. It's a pattern. It's one of those egoic patterns, the pattern of the ego, the program of the ego that wants to believe in something good and is so afraid of the opposite. And I'm not sure if it's the fear itself that gets to a person, like what are the consequences of admitting to something that is the opposite to what they're wanting to believe, or just wanting to see the good in something. An example of cognitive dissonance, if a person doesn't know it, is, say, for example, you know that smoking is damaging to the body, yet you still do it because you kind of don't want to believe that you're going to get damaged. And so maybe the addiction to the experience of that cigarette feels so much better than facing the truth that we are actually poisoning ourselves if we are smoking. So that's one example of it on a practical scale. Another example of it on a less practical scale is, let's talk about it within a relationship, just a human being to human being relationship, when people get into abusive and toxic relationships, generally when those relationships start, there's been a lot of charm, there's been a lot of trust that you've put into somebody to believe and wanting to believe that they're these good things that they maybe told you they were, or even showed you they were in the beginning of a relationship. And then slowly there's the subtle, like, hey, something's off, something's not right here. And that starts happening, and you don't actually want to believe that these people are perhaps not in their integrity. They're not who they say they are and who you believe they are. But at the same time, you don't want to doubt them, because that seems like it's being bad. And you sit in a cognitive dissonance and you stay in these situations and circumstances, even when that's not actually serving you. It actually, you'll end up doubting yourself. So cognitive dissonance explained. Now I want to talk about, what does that mean for us as human beings and our sovereignty? Well, it means that we're not going to want to look at the world around us in a way that fucks with our ideology of what we want to believe something is. So in a sense, the world around us creates an element of ideology, an element of good, and it's how they hook you to believe their lies in the first place, is to say, hey, this is good. And then the people go, oh, they're doing this because it's good. But actually, if you just look a little bit further, you can see that it's not actually serving people. It's not serving the whole. And I'm going to take simple examples, like number one, world hunger, the amount of people on this planet who don't have food and good sources of food. That is a basic human right. If you're born, you're a human being, you should have food. Yes, humans need to eat, and so access to food and good food should just be a given. And yet it's not. It's not a given. It's a form of control over human beings. Now, the fact that some people are starving would make me doubt the leadership of anybody on this planet. I know that they have segregated leadership to country, but you have other countries that invade countries all the time. So I can't even say, and then they try and pull rank, but circumstances don't change. In fact, sometimes circumstances get worse. Like, was it Syria? Anyway, there are all these blatant, it's blatant that the people who are meant to be caring are not caring, yet we want to believe that they do care. And that is a cognitive dissonance inside ourselves. We also have that cognitive dissonance to ourselves. So on a global scale, we don't want to believe that the world is bad. People want to believe shit because somehow it's, I don't know, being in denial is easier than living in the truth. There is a great saying, the truth shall set you free, and it's a fact. It's a fact. It's fact. It's fact. But the truth isn't always going to be pretty. And how can you be sovereign if you're not willing to look at all the truth and all the stuff going on in the world or in yourself? Let's go back to the self. You can't change what you can't see, and you can't make free choices if you don't want to look at all the things that are going on in the whole circumstances of life that are going on. So the only way to progress as human beings, and the only way to be able to come back to that soul sovereignty where people don't give their power away to something that doesn't actually care about it, that sees you as a commodity, is by actually gaining awareness of yourself and starting to be honest with yourself about who you are and how you function. I do believe, and I can see and I know that the world around us, the external world around us, is a reflection of our internal world. And the cognitive dissonance that we have with ourselves is not wanting to believe, or not actually just wanting to look at our own shit. Self-awareness is is hard for most people, but I think it's the honesty that really people find really, really difficult. It's the honesty that we're assholes or behaving like an asshole in certain respects. We don't want to believe that a certain behavior that we have can be hurting somebody else. And it hurts us that somebody else would even point that out to us in the first place, because we're in such a deep space of denial about ourselves that we can't even look at the truth of ourselves and our own behavior. And that is a direct reflection of how we relate to the world around us and the world outside of ourselves. I think it's so important that people learn this and people understand this. And so cognitive dissonance is something that we have to try and overcome. And sovereign people will be able to observe it. Sovereign people are still human beings living human lives with an ego, with a pain body. But the difference is they're not going to hide from the truth. They're not going to hide from themselves. In fact, they're going to do everything they can to bring their life back to a point where they're making conscious choices for themselves and healing the parts that are so broken outside, but start building, like healing them inside, so that the outside world can start reflecting integrity and authenticity and honesty. But it can't do that until we are able to be completely honest with ourselves first and foremost.